Now I have no other choice. You're done. You're done. Leave the field. Too many flagrant offenses and unfair attacks and too little action. You're out. Hit the showers. It's the red card. First of all, your chance to play a role in how immigration and deportation policies are carried out this year is over. Having been given time and space to craft legislation, you failed.
Well, the Supremes may have danced their legal way into our hearts this week with a few decisions certain to have repercussions for decades, but plenty of those words are not sitting well at all in the White House. Also not sitting well is what seems to be a threat from the president about immigration reform. Certainly a showdown is on the horizon, so let us dig in. Welcome to MidPoint, the legal director and general counsel from the American Civil Rights Union, Peter Ferrara, and also political commentator, host of his own talk show on Sirius XM satellite radio, Armstrong Williams. Gentlemen, we thank you both for joining us today. Gentlemen, can you both hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, making sure. Technical thing, we want to make sure you can hear me. All right, let me start out with immigration right off the top here. Peter, I'm going to hit you with this first of all here, because Luis Gutierrez comes out and says immigration reform is absolutely dead and the only option right here is for the president to take executive action, and the president seems to be willing to say, I will go it alone and I'll do it with or without you. Your reaction?
If he does that, he should be arrested, because if he breaks the law, he's subject to the law just like anyone else. So he needs to be prosecuted if he does that.
What about it, Armstrong?
Is he?
Well, I think that the president has been given like the kind of relaxed and overreach and egregious actions like we've never seen before in the history of presidential powers, whether it's Affordable Care, whether it's the National Relations Board that he made the recess appointment in January 2012 and tried to convince us that we were stupid, that the Senate was in recess, and everybody knew how ridiculous that it was that we were not in recess. And I think Congress, we talk about the Democrats giving this president this overreach, but Republicans have stood by. So why would you be surprised now that the president, who has no regard for the Constitution, would now say that he will execute it in any way that he wants to get what he wants? And there's nothing you're going to do, especially when you allowed me to run roughshod for the last 6 years. So why are we surprised? This has been a lot, and it's a president that is really out of control. And how do you rein it in? Can they rein him in? I'm not sure.
Peter, we're talking about reining the president in here. So how then do we do it? Or let me put it this way, instead of we, how then do the Republicans do it? And what does the American public do in order to force him to be reined in, if that's indeed at all possible at this point?
Well, there's an election this fall, and it's up to the voters. If you don't like having a president who scoffs at the law, laughs at the law, breaks the law, and says, "Go ahead and sue me, I dare you." If you don't mind that, then go ahead and vote for Democrats again. But if you do think that the law should apply to the president as well as everyone else, it's time to fire Harry Reid as the Senate Majority Leader, put grown-ups in charge of the United States Senate, and enforce the law.
Okay, well, let me ask you then a question that the American public will ask. Where are the grown-ups? And I'll throw this to either one of you right now, because this is something that we've heard many times. Let a grown-up run it. Where are the grown-ups, and who are the ones that are going to take control and run this and get this immigration ball rolling somewhere?
Well, I think there's a very important aspect that you're leaving out of this equation. I think Republicans particularly are very afraid to take on this president. They're afraid of being labeled racist. They're afraid of being labeled that they're against this president because he's the first. And what is happening in this country now, he has the biggest PR firm, the mainstream media, who are his enablers that allowed him to do this. And they know it's an election year and they have to put their fingers in the wind to see which way the wind is blowing. But I do think the Cantor defeat earlier has given some light to the fact, while many may say it was about immigration, others would say it's about too big to fail. I do think that the Democrats are very interested in keeping the majority in the Senate and not having any more bloodletting in the House. And I think it will take the Democrats, not the Republicans, to say, hey, are we willing to destroy our party and our election chance by allowing this president to run out of control and we do nothing to stand in his way? And I think Democrats have to stand in and say, look, we're at stake, the president has nothing to lose, and we must preserve our best interests at the expense of this president.
Peter, are there people brave enough in the Republican Party, and again, as Armstrong mentioned, they're afraid to take on the president? Are there those who are brave enough to actually do it and get it done?
Are the voters brave enough to actually take on the president this fall? there's no chance of the Republicans don't have the power to take on the president. So if you want them to have the power to take on the president, you've got to vote them in office. So we'll take the vote this fall, assuming the Democrats do go ahead with the election, and then we'll see what the results are. But the voters need to speak and need to stand up and decide, do they want the president to be subject to the rule of law or not? The Constitution says the president's duty is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. When he says he's not going to enforce the law, the immigration law as written, he's violated the Constitution and his oath of office. So this issue goes to the voters. Is it acceptable to have a president who violates the Constitution and says, go ahead and sue me, like he did with his recess appointments that were recently struck down by the Supreme Court, 9-0. There was no reasonable argument for the president making a recess appointment when the Senate was not in recess. You couldn't even get a left-wing Democrat on the Supreme Court to agree to that. So he lost 9-0. No reasonable argument. And the president says, too bad. Sue me. Go ahead.
I think what's missing here is that we have three branches of government, and it's called the check and balance system. We have the founders left us a system in place to make sure that we would not have a president who would behave like a dictator. If the House and the Senate were to do their jobs, we would not have this kind of disregard for the Constitution, disregard for we the people. I think it is very important in November that the American people send a strong signal as to whether or not they like the direction this country is headed, whether it's the issue in Iraq now, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's the economy and the fact that the jobs are not there, whether it's affordable care, which the president promised, you can keep your physician, the prices would not soar. All those things have proven that the president was dishonest, that he was misled by his advisors. The American people gave this president another chance in the last presidential election, and I think it sort of emboldened this president to do what he's doing because in his mind, he has the mandate of the people. But obviously, if you look at the poll, his poll numbers, the latest Rasmussen poll, the latest polls by the Wall Street and CBS and NBC clearly shows that the president's approval rating is at a historic dismal low. I actually think there is hope that the American people are becoming very disenchanted with his policies and the fact that the economy is not working and foreign policy is even worse. And I do think that we have awakened a sleeping giant, and I am hopeful that we will see the results of that in the November election.
Peter, is it fair to say that the American public, though, are disenchanted not just with the President of the United States, but certainly elected officials on both sides of the aisle right now?
No, I wouldn't say there's equal disenchantment with both sides of the aisle. You have a president who refuses to obey the law. You know that no other president in U.S. history has ever tried to make recess appointments when the Senate was not in recess. This is the only president ever to try to make a recess appointment when the Senate is not in recess. So, I mean, are we going to do something about that? You know, my motto is, don't blame Barack Obama. Blame the Democrat Party. They're the ones who are covering for them. They're the ones who allowed him to infiltrate and actually end up in the Oval Office. So it's up to you, the voters. You need to stand up first because you do not, the Republicans don't have the power now to hold him accountable. So the American people need to decide, do we want to have a real check and balance on him or do we want the mess that we're in now?
What would you both expect the next step?
I think it's,
go ahead.
I think it's very difficult to embrace and agree with what was just said. To totally exonerate the Republicans and the GOP from this fiasco, I think you lose the trust of the American people. The only reason why the Republicans' approval ratings may be any higher is because they're not Democrats and they're not in the White House. But I think the American people, including the GOP base, is just as disenchanted as anyone else with what's going on in this country. And to say that the Republicans have no power, no clout to change the trajectory that this country is on, I think it is a sad commentary coming from you because they do have the power. The problem is they're too cowardly to use it and enforce it.
Peter, your response then?
No, I didn't say I completely exonerate them, but they have made some changes. They have put a stop on the rate of increase in spending. Has been dramatically reduced since the Republican majority was elected in 2010, and they have had an effect. They could be more aggressive, like Senator Cruz is, and they should be. But We don't totally exonerate them, but on the other hand, it's a misreading to say, both parties are equally culpable. You have one party, the Democrats, who are basically a conspiracy against the open conspiracy against the Constitution, and have been so for 100 years now, and that's all in the public record.
I only have about 30 seconds left. Very quickly from both of you. First, Peter, the lawsuit by John Boehner against the president, do you expect that to really go anywhere at all?
Yes, I do. I think that was an act that he's to be applauded for pursuing, and that does have promise. And I think there are still judges, federal judges, who are appalled at the way Obama's laughing at the law. There are liberal professors who are saying that this is unacceptable, out of control. It violates the fundamentals of America, the rule of law.
Okay, I have to go into Armstrong. Armstrong, I'll give you 15 seconds. Go ahead.
You know, it's just more symbolism. There's no substance there. It doesn't do anything to change the trajectory on, and it's just more of the same.
A debate which we will have to table and then until another time, and I'm sure we'll be back. Peter Ferrara, Armstrong Williams. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, for your time. We will do it again. It certainly is a debate that will go on and on because, if you see, there are both sides here, and there are very distinct thoughts on both sides. More thoughts coming up as here on MidPoint. We question everything.